Hello, everybody. I'm Annie Izmirliyan. I've been a financial planner for over 20 years. I've coached hundreds of advisors and leaders on how to have a successful human-based practice. And I've helped thousands of individuals and families and business owners with their financial planning goals and needs. I'm so honored to be here today as a 10x mentor expert on finance and an international Amazon bestseller author, and and especially as a mom to a intelligent and beautiful little girl who's in her preteens. um, I'm just so excited to be here with all of you. I don't know how to summarize all the life experience into a couple of seconds, but I hope that I can share a little bit, some soulful wisdom, along with some practical, technical, tangible knowledge, whether it comes to finances, relationship with money, or just life in general. I really appreciate all the people that have supported me along the way, whether it's, starting my YouTube channel called Annie Unleashed, and the support that I see, not just, in light of my career journey or my personal journey, but the support within the community for each other is so heartwarming and so necessary because we need multiple villages to make this life go round with ease. And so I'm grateful for the support, and I'm here to support you right back. Today, I've had the amazing opportunity to connect with Kevin Mclemore on his podcast, Talk with Kevin and Son. It has been such an aligned, human-centered conversation, touching on some really important topics like money in our life, teaching our kids about money. What do we do as the adult in these little bodies, in the lives of these little human beings? How do we influence them and how do we support them in the way that they need, not just based on our fears or what we've been through? How do we inspire them and transform their lives so that they can live easier and bigger and better lives? We're here to set the foundations, and Kevin has supported this amazing conversation to impact thousands, if not millions of people around the world on this very important topic. So come and listen in, stay tuned, and add your thoughts to the conversation because we can't wait to hear from you.
Welcome to another edition of Talking with Kevin and Son, featuring people you should know. I am Kevin Mclemore. I'm a four-time published author, speaker, and some of my friends call me a mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give power to your voice, inspire, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple. It's hope, helping other people every single day. And that's what we do. Now listen closely. Whatever your objective, successful people like my guest today, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that sometimes enhances their own lives, but many times, like my guest, they pour into others. Every one of us has a story to be told. Every one of us has time that comes and times that goes. We have a life that we have wishes, we have dreams, but all of those dreams are on a foundation of my ability to afford financially, my present situation, my ability financially, be able to support my future situation, and financially be able to afford my dreams. But without careful planning, none of those three will exist. Today's guest, she is recognized in her space as an expert. She is one of the most sought after speakers and educators on a global platform. This lady, she hails from Canada. She's brilliant. She is a mother. She is a lover of a pet. And through resilience, she has built a life through her challenges and also has become a best-selling author on Amazon with the name of her book. And you can correct me, Annie, if this is correct. 10X mentors experts on finance. So whether working with clients, mentoring her peers, or talking to someone like me, some simpleton, just kind of guiding him along, she has dedicated her career and her life. I may not be able to pronounce her name properly, but I know her as Annie um, Zermelin. I got that right. She is an expert. She is a gifted, talented, um, very special person, and I am so honored to have her on here. So I want you to stay tuned. You're going to learn the very basics about finance, when you should get involved in this business, and how you should do it, and how easy it is, and how to build a life of wealth, both emotionally and financially. And here I like to welcome in our guest, Annie. Thank you to being a guest on our show, Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, Miss Annie?
I'm doing great, Kevin. And the one of the ways that I help people say my last name little fun as a little fun treat is just I mean you can pronounce every letter and you would say Izmirliyan, but a lot of times people don't remember that. So I just say Izmirliyan.
It's a million. All right.
Izmirliyan.
All right. So let me ask you this, because I have friends here in the United States that play in this space. And I've always said, when I went to the people that are handling my finance, I worked in professional sports, and I was always amazed that a professional athlete that was a millionaire was being guided by someone that was barely paying their bills. Um, so I'm going to ask you right now, Annie, what makes you happy? Has nothing to do with finance. Listen to that.
Right?
Yep.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on this show. I'm really honored. One of the things that makes me happy is when I get when synchronicities happen so that I get connected to people who are aligned like you and me are.
Hmm.
Like there's no way I knew you, but if it wasn't for those, degrees of people that I met from one to the other, who somehow got me to you, and then we have so much in common. That gives me this like, ooh, this kind of joy that there's so many more people like us in the world. But I'll also say, because I have to say, because my daughter is my number one fan, um, that my daughter and the journey of being her mom and her parent and her guide and her friend makes me happy. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it makes me happy. And then the other synchronistic thing that I would say is my fur baby, my dog, Duke, who also totally unplanned but perfectly aligned. And I think those little surprises in life that you never thought were possible, that you could have never imagined would have been so uh, um, not just fortuitous but for fulfilling. Those are the things that make me happy and keep getting me excited over and over again.
All right. And for those that are just tuning in and listening, it says, why is he asking this question about um, um, what makes her happy? And the reason why I asked this, because I work with a lot of people, and I know a lot of people that are financially fit, extremely financially fit. They're pros in their space, but they're not happy. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because this young lady, my guest, she has gone through some stuff in life and has experienced some stuff in life, that when she talks about financial fitness, she comes from a place of being emotionally and physically and financially fit. So she's on the ground level of where you're at, and she's on the level of where you need to be. So the first question I'm going to ask, because I mentor a lot of young people,
Mm.
um, when should a young person start having a conversation about finance?
I love this question. So I've been in financial services in Canada for over 2 decades. My dad was an advisor before me, and actually was for that reason I didn't want to do this. I never wanted to be in this industry. And actually, for the most part, I would say 98% of people that I talk to in this industry kind of fell into it.
Mm-hmm.
They never planned on it, and certainly never planned on getting into it. But even once they got into it, didn't plan to stay. But then
Mm-hmm.
found their way.
Mm-hmm.
My dad started with me really, really young.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I found it a bit overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about how early do you start, but the way in which you approach it. My daughter is preteens and it's already started. I've already had that conversation in bits and pieces. I'll never forget when she was about 4 or 5 years old and knew that she had a little bit of money that she wanted to go to the store. And even if she had no actual cash, she was pretending to have money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I remember saying to her, this is why words are important. I remember saying to her, make sure you don't spend it. And she said, Mommy, what's spend? And I said, Oh, I should have said, make sure to save it.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, I've been educating her in the way that's relevant and relatable to her. Right now in Canada, they finally started introducing financial literacy into schools. However, here's my issue. I have two issues with this. I think it's great to introduce this early on. Um, when my daughter was in grade 5, she came home and saw a letter on my dining room table and said, "Oh, mommy, you have a line of credit?" And I said, "How do you know what a line of credit is?" And it turns out that I had been learning about credit cards and lines of credit and cryptocurrency and mortgages and all that jazz. The problem is that they learn it, but unless you have something to apply it to, you don't keep it. You don't keep that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And so I brought it down to basics by taking a deck of cards and not using the numbers on the cards, but just the back part of it and saying, you did this thing this week, and so you got paid 4 cards. But wait, you have expenses. So now I need 2 of your cards back. So I said to her, what are you going to do with the other 2 cards? She said, oh, I'm going to spend it. I said, okay, no problem. Now another week goes by, I pay you 4 more cards. And you remember your expenses? You got 2 cards back. Okay. And you got 2 cards left. And I said, oh, but wait, something came up. Your car needs to get fixed. Some emergency came up. Now I need more cards. She says, but mommy, I don't have enough cards. I said, oh, well, that's because last week you spent your 2 cards. You didn't put them away to save. She was like, oh. So then we did another round. She started to pick it up. But some of the best ways to learn as well is board games. Like
Mm-hmm.
I love Monopoly. I'm really competitive. So is
Yeah.
my daughter. She's probably more competitive. She's learning sportsmanship. I'm a pretty good sport. And so learning how to play board games that have money attached to it,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're buying properties, paying rent, all those kinds of things, is a good way to practice and also a good way to know how you feel about it.
Do
Whether
you know
it's,
the origin of Monopoly?
I don't remember. Enlighten
The
me.
origin of Monopoly was the guy that created, his name escapes me. This was his way of teaching his children wealth about um, access and liabilities. You
Yes.
know, when you talk about a property of home ownership, which in here in the United States, we talk about owning a home. So as long as you own one home, as much as you think that you have now created some financial wealth, you have to pay a mortgage on that. You have to pay property tax on it, whatever. So that home is a liability. Do you
Yeah.
ever own that home? Because the bank is always going to own that home in your life. But if you take that interest from that home, the equity you have in the home and buy a second home and you rent that out and someone is paying you in order to live on there or paying you for the land, now your liability becomes an asset. And if you continue to grow that, and that's the way the board game of Monopoly was set up in order for you to have assets and understand liability. So that was a great example in the way that you were teaching your daughter. So,
Yeah. And you have to do it in your first scenario, by the way, we call that house rich, cash poor,
right.
right? But the way that we need to teach our kids, and it doesn't have to be the parent teaching the kid, but an adult presence teaching a child in real life scenarios. So I took her to the local dollar store when she was like 5, 6 years old. She had $6. She said, I want to buy some stuff. I said, great, but don't forget to think about tax. Well, what's tax, mommy? So she picked all her stuff and I calculated for her, this is kind of what you can afford. And that whole process of, oh, well, I have only this much money, but I want all this stuff. Well, how do I decide? Right? Going through those exercises, we went to a bookstore about a year ago and I actually used real cash and she used real cash and had to get change. And thankfully, because it takes a village, the cashier behind the desk was so patient with my daughter, counting out her change and then making sure she got the right change back. And people started lining up behind me and nobody said a word. Everyone just patiently waited for my daughter to go through this lesson. So I was so grateful to everybody, the cashier and the people in line, to allow the space and the time that my daughter needed to learn the lesson. And when you go through those real life experiences, that's what sticks.
Mhm.
Because I'm also a part-time professor at a local college where I teach financial planning and insurance. And I'm telling you that by the time these students come to college, what I see is that they're not fully prepared. They don't know there's so much that they don't know. So not only do I take it upon me to teach the curriculum that I've been given, but to go beyond to make that into real life scenario, real life applicable teaching and advice.
That's all right. So, what advice would you give to a young person? I'm going to say 15, 16-year-old that's starting their first job. And they can't wait to buy, here in America, sneakers, buy the latest cell phone, pay for this app, pay for that, or start dating or whatever. Um, because I know there's a formula within my household. I don't know if it's right or wrong how your money is to be divided and invested and your free money where you can spend it or whatever. What advice would you give to, I'm going to paint a scenario. Single mother raising three kids. Two of the three kids are now of working age. They have a first car that they're sharing with their family. They have a paycheck every single week. What's the conversation of how to make their money work for them? What advice?
So my advice may be a little bit unconventional. Yes, there is that typical ratio that you mentioned, and there's a couple different ratios out there. But what I would actually say is, first of all, a lot of kids don't listen to their parents at that age.
Okay.
So you need to surround yourself with the people that are in their environment who are also going to guide them responsibly when it comes to money related decisions. So basically, have the village. So you are an important and influential part of your child's life, yes. But when you tell them some really good advice and they still don't listen,
Hmm.
like, what do you know?
Right.
What do you know, mom and dad, right? Or own aunt and uncle or grandma, grandpa? What do you know? I'm gonna go do this thing myself. Sometimes they'll listen, but it's really important that it's not all on your shoulders, right? Takes the village. But also to make it really hone in for that 15, 16-year-old is find out what's important to them. Because that mother with 3 kids, those 3 kids are going to have completely different relationships to money, even though they've grown up in the same household.
Right.
So it's really about understanding the human. What influences them? What motivates them? What do they think about money? Um, what goals do they have? And why are those goals important? And not the ones you think that should be goals for them. You know, as a parent, what the right thing to do is generally. Let's just say you've learned your life lessons and you know you've made your mistakes and know what's the right thing to do. And you just want them to have it a bit easier than you. The problem is they also need to learn from their mistakes. So despite you giving the right advice, they still have to make their mistakes. And that's how they learn. But if you can be, this is probably more important, I think, from my point of view. If you can be that safe space for your children, no matter what age, where they know they can come to you, whether they made the wrong decision, maybe they lied about something, maybe they did something they knew they shouldn't have, but they know they can come and talk to you about it. That is more important than pretty much anything else. Because if they've got a solid place to come back to and say, hey, I messed up, and the ability to be honest about it and say, okay, so you messed up. What'd you learn? It won't be the last time that you mess up. So what'd you learn from this? My dad, when I was about 17, I got my first summer job. And before I started, he was already a financial advisor at that point. And he said to me, Annie, your first paycheck, put it away, save it, put it in a savings account, an investment account. And I kind of blustered, like, what? Like, I finally get to make money and you're telling me not to use it? And he actually showed me a chart with numbers. Because again, I was like, what do you know? And he showed me a number that said, listen, if you put in $1,000 to $2,000 a year now, just your first paycheck, and then the rest do whatever you want, but your first paycheck, put that away. Over time, you will have saved so much more because the earlier you start, the more that money grows on itself. We call that compounding. Especially if you put it in an account that has tax benefits, okay? If you do that versus waiting 5, 10 years and then putting a huge chunks of money in, you will still have more in that account and more growth than somebody who started later but put more money in. And when I saw that, the facts and the numbers, I was like, yeah, I want more money. So if I sacrifice my first paycheck, so be it. Then then the rest I have fun with. Now I'll tell you this. I remember putting that money in my first paycheck. I don't remember what I did with the rest of the money, the rest of that summer. Isn't that funny?
That is funny. That is funny. And for my listeners, I want to explain to you the reason why this series of questions I asked Annie early on, because I wanted to talk to our young people that are starting out, that are creating relationships with money. A lot of times we talk at our children. And Annie, the same way. Our parents can talk blue in the face, but we seem to take advice from everyone else. I got my first investment advice from one of my football coaches. I had a full-time job making a couple $100, and he told me how to divide it up and whatever. And by the time I was 30, and I had to realize that, and he said it, do you plan on living to be 30 years of age? And he did the same thing. He showed me a chart. If you're planning to live to be 30, if you do this, and every single time I made a little bit more money, I got a raise. I put my raise in that investment account. And true enough, when I was 30 years of age, I had a boatload in my mature mind, a lot of money. So I wanted Annie to talk to our children that are not listening to their parents, and I want you to take this little advice. Before we segue into going directly to talking adult conversation and talking about our best-selling book, I first want to say, Annie, how do people get in touch with you and how do they get your book?
Well, so I have a website, annieizmirliyan.com. I started a YouTube channel just a month ago, actually, finally, called it's at Annie Unleashed. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Annie Izmirliyan.
All right. And the name of your book?
It's a book collaboration, actually, and so I've got a chapter in there. Oh, I forgot the title of it.
10X,
So I'm
10X.
called a 10X Mentor Expert um, within that book, but it was about my particular chapter was about resilience. And so the whole book is really, a collaboration amongst people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different expertise on the topic of resilience. And here's what the last thing I want to say about helping out our kids on this topic of resilience. It's better that you allow them to have things a little bit tougher in the beginning financially so that they learn sooner, so that things are easier later. If you make it too easy in the beginning, it'll be actually more difficult for them later on.
All
So
right.
allow them to build the resilience earlier.
So I want to segue from children, but now you just brought me back. A question.
Yeah.
Where's there more value, profit over humanity or humanity and profit? Where do you place the value at? Do we need more money and care less about human beings or vice versa?
That's an easy one for me. I think we always have to care about human beings because we're the one that create the currency.
All right. All right. So you have a mentorship program that you offer financial services to professionals.
Yeah.
Entry level, if I were sitting across your desk right now, I have a little bit of money put aside. Um, and I would say roughly early seven figures. And I'm taking my 401k, which has a healthy amount in it, and my company is matched from that. I have some savings, I have some stocks, and I'm looking at my latter years in life to be comfortable with the lifestyle I have. And I have a very simple lifestyle. Lucky I own my home. I own all four my pieces of poor investment of transportation. I always say the two worst investments are cars and jewelry. I own very little jewelry, but I have a relationship with fast cars and motorcycles. So I only have 2 feet and four modes of transportation, which I love. Um, I'm coming to you for financial services. Where do we begin?
Well, if you have a really good financial advisor or financial planner, they're not going to start with the quantitative questions, the numbers questions. They're going to
Okay.
start with what we just talked about, which is the humanity,
Hmm.
learning about you as a person. So, for example, one of the things that I don't necessarily start with right away, but is one of the most important questions that I ask in a meeting is what are your values and philosophies around money, saving or spending? How'd you grow up with money?
I grew up dirt poor, not having a conversation with money. Um, one of 13 kids. I didn't own my first pair of Converses until I had my own little lawn serving business. Otherwise, I had hand-me-down shirts, sweaters, jeans, and so forth. Slept in a bed with my brothers. And I always wanted a life independent versus the life that I had on my own. But my grandfather always said, and you'll hear me say this at the end of the show, he says, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone else out, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. That is my tagline, and that's how I live. I have a great life now, and my whole platform is about helping other people. I've had it all, and I've lost it all, and I've rebuilt it. Whereas I realize having a lot of money wasn't where I really placed success or values. My values and my success were the experiences and the conversation of people I surrounded myself with. Money just happens to be those things that allowed me to buy things I couldn't buy when I didn't have money, allowed me to go places where I couldn't go. But the experiences I had with people made me the most wealthiest person in the world. So that may not translate well on a spreadsheet, but take that conversation and how would you advise me?
So I get, it's really funny. Whenever you tell somebody, oh, I'm a financial advisor or financial planner, um, I always get like the one question, hey, so should I get this stock? What should I take, a fixed or variable mortgage? And I love the question because it's not that simple. Financial planning is both an art and a science. The
Hmm.
science is, well, let me look at the numbers, let me look at, the age, how those accounts work. Your IRA, you said a 401k. Your
Hmm.
401k is a lot very similar to the retirement accounts we have in Canada with, some differences, but you have to understand how those accounts work, how contributions and withdrawals work, tax brackets that you're going to be in, all of that jazz, all the science of it, the technical part. But the art is what's important to you. I asked you a question about how you grew up around money. That influences your relationship with money. So even if I gave you the technically correct textbook advice, you may not implement any of that because our relationship to money is emotional.
Right. I understand that. And my grandfather always said, he says, if you can't pay cash for it, you don't need it. But in the financial world, all the wealthy people say, don't spend any of your money, use the bank's money, be in debt.
Yeah.
Um, how does that apply in financial planning?
Well, what's interesting is you've mentioned that you have like this, maybe I think it's your scenario, but maybe it's a pretend scenario of, your investments and your assets in terms of your car, motorcycle, and whatnot. But you
Oh, this
haven't,
was all true. I I
right.
I, I I don't have a great imagination.
Okay. And so, but you haven't mentioned insurance.
Yeah, I do have insurance.
Yeah. And so as a financial planner, we look at all the pieces. Most people just think it's my investments in the cash in the bank. And when you actually look at all the pieces, how the money is flowing throughout your life, based on you, the person, and how you're living your life, what's important to you. So my dad actually started in insurance and then later on moved over to the investment brokerage side. And so
Hmm.
he used to tell me, rich people get insurance. And if I take that a step further, what he was really saying is, if you want to get rich, you get insurance.
Hmm.
For a couple of reasons. It's a transfer of risk. So you're not taking all the risk on yourself because saving money takes forever, and spending it takes 1 second, right?
Hmm.
And so I could give you a whole plan with the black and white numbers. But what would
Hmm.
I would actually advise you would be so far beyond that because it would really be about what do you want to do with your life? What's important to you? How do you want to pass that down to your kids? How are you teaching them about money? One of the things that a lot of advisors actually forget about, and I've been speaking on this for so long, and yet there's still not enough about this, is the intergenerational wealth. And I would think of that both in terms of education, financial education, as well as the actual passing of assets. A lot of people will focus on the what's next, which is important. As a financial planner, I'm going to look at what's next, but also what's next, 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 and beyond. What's your legacy? If I ask you, what do you want your legacy to be? That would influence the advice I give you around what we do with your money as well.
But with someone that's never had money and all of a sudden they have a six-figure job and they're trying to make sure that when they get to my age that they're comfortable, they may not have that answer. How do you help them get to that answer?
I'm going to ask the qualitative questions. So some of the questions I've asked you here today, and yes, ultimately I would need numbers as well. But the advice that I give, first of all, no responsible advisor or planner should give you an answer on the spot.
Okay.
um, because you don't really have the whole picture. And even when you have what you think is the whole picture, we still have a disclaimer that
Hmm.
the advice and recommendations that we're providing is based on the information that we have. And even then, a financial plan can be out of date as soon as you present it because things change in life.
Hmm.
So, what I would say in terms of advice, aside from like, making sure that you're working with a professional to make it the most tax efficient, where you're drawing your money from, because in retirement, you're asking about retirement, right? Like what's the
Hmm.
best way for me to use my money? Um, there are some government benefits probably that, apply in the US that we'd need to consider that also affects your tax rate. You have to also look at your retirement accounts that when you withdraw affects your tax rate. So there's that tax efficiency piece, but also beyond that, I always tell my college students, know the game, um, and know the rules so you can play the game.
All right.
Okay, so know the rules so you can play the game. Most people don't spend the time to know the rules. And that's okay as long as you have a professional that will teach you how it works, kind of like the game of Monopoly.
Right.
And so, um, if you know the rules so you can play the game, then you make that work for what's truly important to you, which is how do I want to live my life? What's the legacy that I want to live? How do I want my kids to feel and live their life and my grandkids, right? If you have them, and so on and so on. What's the legacy you want to create in your community? Because as you know, money creates options. Money creates flexibility.
Hmm.
Money creates the opportunity for you to give back and uplift others.
All
And
right.
so that is probably if you're not being asked that, then you're missing a big piece of your financial plan.
All right. So I want to ask this. That was some great advice. Great advice,
Thank you.
Miss Annie. Um, Big conversation with young people. Like I said, I talk to a lot of young people that are entering college, whatever, and the whole conversation, which I have no idea. I'm about to interview a young man that is making millions and millions of dollars in a space which I don't understand. Crypto.
Mhm.
Crypto or some other things. He's actually found a way to mine something that's totally new. I don't even know what it is. Financial planning. I mean, as far as I know, it's nothing tangible. It's not like holding a dollar bill in hand or any other type of currency. It's something that I don't understand how you imagine mining something that doesn't physically exist in place of value. Because my biggest thing is if I had $20 million worth of cryptocurrency, I'm cashing out. How do I cash out? Explain to me for my listeners. Um, Good investment, bad investment, any advice? What the hell is it?
Well, again, not so clear cut, but I'd like to say a couple things about that. One, it's great that you're taking the opportunity to learn from somebody regardless of age.
Right.
I do run a mentorship program for financial services professionals, whether they're leaders or advisors. And one of the things that really, when you ask me about what makes you happy, what gets you excited, I have a couple of advisors, 30-year veterans, asked to be a mentee, to learn from someone who's been in the industry less than them, but might know more.
Okay.
And so the way that I run my mentorship program is about redefining it completely. It's not about, you're up here and the person is down here. Like you've been doing this forever and they just started. The perfect example is this person that you're talking about. They haven't been doing this for years and years. They don't have like, three decades of experience in financial services and planning, but they took the opportunity to learn about something that we, no matter our age or our expertise, also want to learn about. I think it's you said him. So
Right.
that young person's willingness. And by the way, I know of a lady in her 60s who also no experience in financial services. I got connected to her through somebody else, and she's done really well in crypto and digital wallets as well. And she taught me some things that I thought was so cool. Part of the great thing about it is there's no really barrier to entry. So anybody can learn, regardless of age. And I think that's true for a lot of things. Um, Now, a lot of our banks in Canada still don't permit that in the investment accounts, but they're working on it. And so it's a big shift and a big change. And I expect that within a few years, we will see some of that um, opening up. It's going to require the entire industry to really learn and understand how that works. Am I an expert? Absolutely not. But what I do see is that someone took a step to experiment and learn, and they're doing really well, but I'm sure there was some, failures and mistakes along the way, and that's how they learned, right? And they persisted. They persisted in their learning. Maybe they even got some advice from others, or they went on, online, and they did some research and they learned and they absorbed and they tried it and implemented it. One of the ways that we become wealthy in life, whether it's financially, spiritually, physically, emotionally, is when we learn something and we apply it consistently. Learn and apply, right? Applied knowledge is power.
That's good. Um, you mentor, you coach. I'm going to say, listening to you, I don't understand why you don't have your own podcast. This is, a
It's in the
subliminal
works,
message.
Kevin.
I'm telling you, it's a subliminal message of saying you should. Um, I love your approach to it. It sounds very personal. I'm learning as doing this, having this conversation with you. And I hope our listeners are taking this, because I can tell you sincerely care about what you do. Now, is your coaching and mentoring, is it individual, group? Is it, I know I mentioned earlier you have a global platform. Um, how do they get in contact with you in order to, even from the US to the Canadian side, how do they get in contact with you in order to be part of this mindset on financial freedom?
Yeah, so my mentorship program is a program that I ran for a nonprofit for the last few years, and I'm actually renovating it, repurposing it to be something that is something that I can invite not just Toronto-based advisors and leaders, but can all of Canada and globally. I attended a conference, a global conference with the top 6%, top 3%, top 1% of advisors around the world. And I found that they had pretty much the same issues, the same challenges, the same concerns, and the same opportunities. So I realized that this kind of a program doesn't really exist. And based on our conversation, it's really about the human being. The people that we are serving are human beings. They're not just human doings. And so we have to lead the way as the advisors, as the leaders, with more of that training. The training in our industry in financial services hasn't changed too much over decades. I mean, if I asked my dad what his training was like, it's pretty much the same. What I do a little differently is that I take and learn about what are your natural instinctive strengths. What do you do with ease? So there's training, and then how you take from that training and apply it to yourself. In financial services, unfortunately, and I'm hoping that this changes over time, maybe I'll be that part of that catalyst for change, is that we have kind of the standard training, and then we have the leaders that implement certain criteria, some of that training, in pretty much the same way. And I've worked at investment brokerages, I've worked at insurance companies, I've worked at wealth management firms, and it's a lot the same. What they forget is that each person in that training room is going to apply it differently. So, for example, that young person doing crypto, they were maybe comfortable with risk and uncertainty, and they went and tried it anyway. Is crypto for everybody? That's the wrong question. It's about understanding somebody's level of risk. What kind of risk are you comfortable with? What kind of risk do you need? And what's your time horizon? How long, on average, do you have to make mistakes and learn from them and then recover from them? So, in terms of mentorship, the way that I do it is I really try to help people be themselves, be true to who they are and how they need to do things in order to succeed. For too long, and this can go back to the kind of the school system and the school structure, because I certainly can see my daughter struggling with it, because her natural strengths aren't about structure and detail, which is what our schools ask. Tell me the answer, but then show me how you worked it out, right? Tell me all the steps. And someone like my daughter is going to say, did I get the right answer? Well, yes. So then why do you need to know all the steps?
Hmm. Sounds like something my youngest son would say.
Right. So does that make her wrong? No. What are her natural strengths? This is currently what I'm dealing with my daughter's teachers in school, and they're willing to collaborate and to work on different solutions with me on in her best interest. But the school system is very structured and very detailed, and it's been that way for as long as I can remember. But what do you do with people who don't fit into that, but they have all these other amazing strengths that can be applied? The school system is good for some things, but unfortunately doesn't replicate enough real life. And I'll give you an example that's a little bit dramatic. But there was a year when my daughter in her classroom had a couple really disruptive classmates, to the point where the school's policy was, let's remove everybody from the classroom and put them in the library. And that disruptive child, we will leave there, and we'll have some guidance to kind of calm them down and give them the time they need to cool down. And while I really empathized with this child and their family about the challenges that they were having and how this child was not able to emotionally regulate himself, one of my issues with the teachers and the principal was, in the real world, when if you have a job at a company in an office, we wouldn't ask the entire floor of employees to leave so this person can calm down. But they had certain policies and guidelines developed by the school board, and with some government guidance, that under a certain age, this was the best way to handle it for safety purposes. And so there's a lot that we need to work on together to figure out together. But it did lead me to a question in conversation with my daughter. My daughter loves to ask me, would you rather questions? And they're so out of the box that it really makes you think. So one day I asked her a question. Would you rather have a good teacher and not so great classmates? Or would you rather have like great classmates and not so great teacher? And she said, oh, that's easy. I'd rather have a great teacher and not so great classmates. And I was actually surprised by that because her friendships are really important to her. And I said, why? She said, because, mommy, if I have a great teacher, that kind of sets the tone. But if I had like great classmates, but a crappy teacher, then that would just make everything miserable. So already at that young an age, they're so aware of how leadership is important, of how an environment is important, how you conduct yourself. Do I take the risk of engaging in this situation or do I step back? There's so much going on, which is why, to your earlier question, when you say, what's the right advice for kids? It's not about teaching them like, oh, you got to do this ratio, or you got to do that. That's important. It has to be done. But it's really about what's happening in your life right now. Because that's all that's really important to them is what's happening in my life right now. They don't think about the future. They're not set up that way a lot of times.
Right.
So if you can just be the strong, safe space, or at least a safe space, you don't have to be strong all the time because I've been scared and strong at the
Hmm.
same time. But if you can just be that solid person in their life, then that would guide them so much more. And that's what mentorship is too. I create a space and I actually call this in. Like this is not part of your typical training. I start my mentorship programs with this is a safe space. My mentorship program is about community, it's about connection, and it's about collaboration. That's not how the standard training is in financial services. They don't lead with that. They don't end with that either. And then people are struggling. Advisors are struggling with human beings that they're trying to serve. And so this is why, again, to your earlier question, it's always about the human being. You have to know your human being in order to be the human being that serves other human beings.
And you've said it so well in this entire conversation is that when I asked the question, profit over humanity, you just defined and clarified the real value of your return on your investment is starting out young, being honest. And then the other thing is, you wrote and contributed to a book. You talk about resilience. You're talking right on. We hear people here in the United States, we talk about our kids are not tough. And I said, because our parents, their parents, um, run interference for them. They don't allow, the children to fall down without, picking them up, brushing them off and saying it's okay. I know my father used to say, are you bleeding? If you're not bleeding, you're not hurt. And
Yeah,
so I thought as a child it was cruel. But when I started playing football and I had to run through a 300-pound lineman and still got up, I realized that my father made me a lot tougher without making me tough. I chose to overcome some things and everything I learned about life. I learned playing high school football. I'm learning more in this conversation from you, Miss Annie. Um, Most people fear the conversation of talking about their finances because, most of the time that we don't want to talk about finances until we think we have a lot of money. And we don't realize that every dollar turns into $100 and every $100 turns into 200. And all starts with a dollar. No matter how many dollars you have, it starts with $1 and one
it
dollar at a time.
starts it starts with a habit.
All right.
It starts with a habit. And by the way, the book is called Success Without Burnout. And my chapter is chapter 11, um, which is a very fortunate, and it's actually 111 right now. Kevin,
Okay.
how interesting. Um, and I think that's where people struggle. The reason that parents try to help their kids out is not because their kids are scared. Kids don't know what to be scared of when it comes to money. The parents are acting out of fear. I went through
Mhm.
this and it was horrible and I don't want you to go through this, right? There's a fear there. So what they're actually teaching their kids is act out of fear or don't act out of fear. Don't take
You
that step in life.
You have given a lot of information. I thought this was going to be a very short interview. I thought it was going to talk about how old you should be to invest. Talked about how much you should invest. Women that are overcoming some stuff, whatever, how to get into it. But you've peeled back like a layer to a piece of fruit. Each layer of a conversation. You made it personable. You made it comfortable to have the conversation, and you painted a picture from your presence to your future. And I want to thank you um, for being a guest on this podcast. Again, you should have your own podcast, and I know you have your own YouTube page. Real
Yeah.
quick, before we end, tell us about your YouTube page. And I do have one or two more questions I want to ask you, real
Okay.
quick.
So my YouTube channel is called Annie Unleashed. And ironically, I came up with that name. It just kind of fit for me in June or July 2024. I didn't actually record and put my first episode until January 15th, 2025.
Hmm.
And it just goes to show you I'm a human being too. I went through all the fears, all the limiting beliefs, all the what ifs, all of that till I
Hmm.
was actually ready and I had a good supportive group of people around me that kind of nudged me in the right direction. And so it's called Annie Unleashed because um, for so long, both in the personal and professional world, in one way or another, I was asked to say less, ask less questions. And even if I asked one question, it was too many questions, Annie. And so I got to a place where, one, I needed to do this for myself, but also I needed to explain to others financial concepts in a relatable way, in a human way. There's so many people out there that are teaching the technical part of finances. And
Hmm.
yes, there's an aspect to that too that I do. But really, like this conversation today, I'm getting to the root of it. What do you really need to know? And how do these things affect not just this investment account or this insurance policy, but how does it affect your whole life? And what are the things that you really need to think about that most people don't talk about? And I share some, personal, vulnerable stories so that you can understand that you're not alone. That I've been through it too. And just like you, Kevin, I've had situations where I didn't have a lot of money and then I had a lot. I was giving great financial advice to people, logical financial recommendations, but I wasn't doing the same in my own personal life at one point. And the reason that people are afraid to even take a step in terms of building financial wealth is because they're operating on fear, shame, guilt, all the self judgment, the self criticism. So, my hope is with my YouTube channel, Annie Unleashed, that we just do away with all of that. That people know that this is a community where we're helping each other, sharing insights, sharing ideas in the comments that help each other out in the community. Um, and also knowing that it's okay yeah, you went through things. Yes, you went through things. You're going to go through things. But hey, there's a way that there's a community. And there's a way for you to get to the place where you're happier with yourself as a person. And one of the things I say in one of my more recent videos is you don't have to have it all figured out to start. You don't have to know how things are going to turn out or how things are going to end up. All you need to know is the next right step. That's all. And the right people and the right knowledge and the right information will come to you when you're ready and not before. All you have to do is take a step, scared and strong, broken and brave. Just next right step for you.
Annie, I'm going to tell you, I got to go out and get the world ready for you. And one of the things is you just peel back a layer of how I make my decisions on how I invest, how I surround myself with like-minded people that have a high call to action. Um, it's personal. I'm not doing business that doesn't with anyone that doesn't know what I'm going through. If you have been handed a silver spoon all your life, you don't know what it's like to go through divorce. You don't know what it's like to be homeless. You don't know what it's like to live through what you in my emotionally public shame of saying that here you are and all of a sudden the reality is everyone that thought you were going to fail, all of a sudden they witness your failure, but they condemn you for your rise. And I thank you for being authentic. And probably some of my listeners are probably asking, is she married, single, or whatever? I'm going to tell you, if I were you and I was a person of great purpose, I would step up to the plate, reach out to her, and don't come halfway, because she is something special. She's one of my friends, and I protect her. She's good. She's got a beautiful daughter. As you know, she's smart as a whip. But Annie, before we close the show, I have on one of my signs on here: "Don't feed your distractions." How do you deal with distractions?
Ooh. So my daughter is learning, they're just about to start a chapter in her health class about addictions. And I talked to the teacher and he said, we're not just talking about, those typical addictions. We're also talking about, behaviors, social media and all of that stuff. As a single parent, and a multipreneur, I am served, I'm accountable to my daughter first. So great motivator. Um, to the people that I'm supporting in my businesses, my clients, my mentorship program, um, the people that I'm impacting through speaking engagements. I'm accountable to that. And I have a sense of integrity that doesn't allow me to do any less than my best every time I show up. It doesn't mean that I don't have distractions. It's a constant battle for anybody. But I do a lot of the inner work. And I'm not, and I'm happy to say, one of the recent programs that I dove into was something called positive intelligence. Have you heard about this?
No, but you're leading right into the next question. I wanted you
Oh, okay.
to talk about self-directions and to speak your self-talk. So you're
Yeah,
leading right into that.
perfect. So I'm a big fan of neuroscience. Um, I've always wanted to learn more about, how do I work and why do I do it this way? And why do I operate or why do I self-sabotage sometimes? Right? We all do that. Some of us don't want to show it or admit it, but it happens. And the judge in our brain is so strong sometimes. It's a default mechanism. It's been honed and honed over years since you were a child. My purpose, one of my biggest purposes for me, for my life, for my journey is to go from self-sabotage to self-mastery. And there's a great book that I would recommend, if I may,
Go ahead.
written by Brianna Wiest, and it's called The Mountain Is You.
All right.
And so to answer your question about how do I deal with distractions, sometimes I get distracted. And sometimes because I've been working on this with positive intelligence, I catch myself. What's really driving you? What is this saying? Why do you want to watch Netflix instead of doing the thing? What's really going on for you, Annie? And even though I'm this, independent, one gentleman once called me a type A plus. I wasn't just a type A, I was a type A plus. Um, so let's call me type A, independent, strong, all of the things. I also can procrastinate because I get overwhelmed. So how do I manage that for myself? You have to know yourself. So learn yourself first. There's a couple ways to do that. There's a couple tangible ways to do that. I do that for people as well. whether it's in my, mentorship and business consultations, or whether it's for my clients, or just, people in my network. I'll help them out and support them through some very tangible ways, but then do the work, then implement that knowledge. And so one of the ways that I do that, for example, procrastination is a way to avoid, but things still need to get done. One of the probably the most important things I've learned is when there's something I'm trying to avoid, just take the next step. So as an example, let's keep it to finances. You know that you need to do your budget, and most people don't. They don't do their budgets, okay? But they know that they need to. But they're afraid. They're afraid of what they're going to find. They're afraid of like how bad it's going to be. They're afraid of knowing how much debt they really have or how little they have at the end of the month. They're afraid of what it's going to say about their habits and their decisions that they made, in the past that's affecting them now. So they just don't bother. But you need to do it. It's the right thing to do because ultimately that information is going to help you make decisions that can turn the tide for your life. But it can be a huge undertaking, especially if you're not a numbers person, you're not detailed, or you don't understand like spreadsheets and all that stuff. So what do? What's the first thing that you do? Is you sit in front of your computer and just log into your bank account. That's it. And then celebrate it. Just celebrate that. And by celebrate, I mean anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute to a couple minutes. For me, I turn on a song that's really pumps me up and I dance. Then I'm like, yes, I did it. I did it. I did it. I did the thing. I took that step, just one baby step. Because then your brain says, oh, I got rewarded for that. Okay, let's try another baby step and celebrate again. So for me, distractions are, and depending on the person, distractions are a way to procrastinate. They're a way to avoid. When I'm actually super stressed out and overwhelmed, and a lot of people see like all these great things that I'm doing, but they don't realize all the stuff that's happening in the background. I'm working, I'm teaching part-time, I'm having meetings, I'm doing podcasts, I'm speaking. Oh, and I'm taking care of this little human being that requires all of me up until the moment she sleeps. And sometimes if I haven't put me first a little bit that day, it's going to come at the end of the day in form of distractions and negative behaviors.
All right. And we control the self-talk. We control what distracts us. I'm going to give you a book by Dan Sullivan. It's called The Gap in the Gain. We'll simplify
Yes, I've heard of
the
it.
conversation. It's a great book. I will
Mhm.
tell you from, when I speak, I talk about the power of your words and the actions that follow. If I had read that book when I first started speaking, I probably would have a very short speech. All right. But words are the first building block. And I always say that, with everything that you do, and this is strange, I carry a brick on stage with me, and everyone always looks at the brick after I talk for 5 minutes, goes, why do you bring a brick? I said, look at any building. Everything starts with a foundation. One brick leads to another brick, and another brick
Yes.
to a build one. Now, if you build it and put the mortar right, it has a strong foundation. If you build the foundation of your dreams, your hope, your life, and whatever on subjective material, you take shortcuts and whatever, the first storm will blow your dream apart. So when you talk about resilience and self-talk and talk about avoidance of pain, you talk about your distractions, you talk about temptations, all of that will crumble what your life purpose is. And when I talk about um, procrastination, it's one of my original quotes. I say, media procrastination is the first door that opens to mediocrity. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. And the reason why that you are flourishing in what you're doing is because you're 100% true to who you are. You're 100% authentic. You're original because you care, and you are an expert in your field because you have been through some stuff. and you have a story to be told. Again, I'm going to say you need your own podcast, not just your own YouTube channel. We need to
Well,
be, we
I'm,
need, I'm
I'm
going to talk to you about that. All right.
okay.
Because when I
I'm
talk,
actually thinking of starting a podcast and attaching it to the YouTube channel. But we'll talk some more. I would love
all
any
right,
tips and guidance. But here's one
well,
thing I want to add about what you said about gap in the gain. A lot of us are always looking ahead at what's next and what else do we have to do, especially if you're a high achiever or a hyperachiever. Um, a lot of women, unfortunately, um, they're so capable. That's not the unfortunate part. Fortunately, they are so capable. Unfortunately, they don't oftentimes take the topic and the knowledge of finance to heart. And sometimes it's just because you're so overwhelmed with life, you don't even have a moment to learn something new. But women can manage things so well. And actually, women are set to inherit trillions of dollars in inherited wealth over the next few years. So we need to really support our women in terms of financial education. But here's what I want to say about the gap in the game. We're always looking at the next thing to do and the next thing to do and the next thing to do. And, or sometimes we're just afraid to take that next step, right? Maybe it's start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, start a business, whatever the case may be for you. And we're so caught up in our doubts and our fears, and then our brain kicks into, remember that time you made that mistake? Look how that turned out. And we forget to look back, which is like your gap in the game. We forget to look back at all the things we were able to get through, all the things that we did learn, all the things that we did accomplish, all the hurdles that we overcame. How did we get here to who we are today? It's because of all of that before. And so I have this exercise that I do, in my program and in some groups called Proof Positive. You just build up your toolbox of all the things that you did get through, all the things that you were able to accomplish, all the things, all the courses you finished, it doesn't even have to be a course. If you took a recipe and you used that recipe and you made the thing, it doesn't matter how it turned out. The fact that you finished it, that's an accomplishment. If you manage to do your laundry, fold it and put it away in the same day, that's an accomplishment. Because on some days,
congratulations.
there's too much going on.
Well,
A
this is
little
the
thing.
reason. This is the reason. One of the, I listen to my critics, and then I don't listen to my critics. They always say your podcasts are too long, but I also look at the fact that Joe Rogan has a podcast that lasts for 2 hours, and they talk about nothing. I listen to other podcasts, and they talk about nothing, whatever. As soon as you have a podcast that has some stuff substance to it, great content. Oh, I wish it was a little bit short and whatever. I really don't care. The fact that my podcast runs longer than most. I have great content. I have quality people that show up. You don't get a chance to meet many people like Annie and get this advice. This is a multi-million dollar conversation that we've had. We've been laid back. We kicked our shoes off. We propped them up on the table. We've had tea, crumpet, and some of us had a Bud Light during this whole conversation. And there's a young person that finally looked at a conversation that their parents have been telling them and saying, now I need to take action and make some changes on here. And if you had to say to our audience what you wanted people to take away from this interview before we wrap up, what would that be?
Now, we
What do
really
you want
didn't
people?
touch on it, but it is, to me, the source of everything that gets you into your best self, which is trust your instincts. And if you're a parent trying to guide a young human being, let them trust their instincts too. Develop that. Develop that.
And you actually did get to the point of trusting your instincts within your conversation. because that was one of my questions on there, but you did say that. So, ladies and gentlemen, um, we have we have covered a lot of information. You got the chance to know Annie as a person. You got a chance to know Annie as a mother. You got a chance to know her as a mentor, as a coach on each and every level. But you also got a chance to hear Annie's truth. All right. Success comes with the definition of what you think success is. When she talks about humanity over profit, she's talking about her life success. Um, Wonderful conversation. I can go on for another 2 hours and talk about that. We're probably going to have you back and talk about some other things that we have in common that we talked about off air. But Annie, what is your? You had to list your secrets to success because I'm going to do something that I don't do to a lot. I've got a list of 100 people, and I talk about their secrets to the success. And many people have a short list, and some people have a long list. If you were to share your secrets to success, and I am now officially announcing to the world, you're one of the top 100 people that I'm adding to that list that I want to share their secrets to success. What are your secrets?
I would say don't keep yourself a secret, for one. You're living a life, you have value, you have something to share. Don't keep yourself a secret. The reason I say that is because for so long I isolated, because I really didn't want people to see how I was suffering and struggling in my personal and professional life. And the thing that really propelled me was um, leaning on my community, a carefully curated community, not just anybody, but taking the step to build a community, collaborating with others, building connection with others by building connection to myself. And once I got to the point where I thought, yeah, I'm ready to shine my light unapologetically. So many people were telling me, you got to do this. You got to do this, Annie. And it was about not keeping myself a secret. When you get to that point where you understand your strengths, you understand how to protect and prioritize the important things in your life, including rest and self-care. All of that, the mentorship, the community, trusting yourself, it's huge because we can be great at self-negotiating ourselves into and out of things. So that trust doesn't always have to make sense at first. When you're called to do something, and you don't have to know all the hows of how to do something. You just need to start with one brick, with one step, with one yes. And you'll learn, you'll get support. You just need to be open to you and all that you're capable of. And the rest will write itself.
All right. All right. And understand the power of no. To my listening audience and my loyal fans, I want to thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode and showcasing a person we should know. And if you have someone that we should feature their story, or you want to like the page or subscribe or share, go to our YouTube page at RMK Productions and network and subscribe and follow. In the caption of this, if you have someone you want to recommend, you can go to info@rmkproductions.org and email us someone. But I want you to remember this, and I want you to take away from the conversation that we just had with Annie. To grow, you must make some mistakes. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. To learn, you must unlearn some stuff. And to exist, you have to do what Annie has done. You have to show up more and be true to who you are. Understand the power of your words. This is notes from what my friends call me the mindset messenger. My grandfather said, and I mentioned this early on, he says, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, it is your duty to do so, like Annie has done. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, Annie, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. You are always welcome back. I can't wait to see the next page of your story. Maybe we'll have your daughter on with you. But adapt this hashtag. It's long. My son says it's way too long. Find 1,000 reasons to be kind to someone. But with that said, reach one, teach one. We will fade to black, and we're out.